Hey everyone, welcome to Danny Chats. This is episode number 23, and today I'm joined by Rachel. And this is the first time I've spoken to someone on the podcast that's had a lung transplant, so it's quite exciting for me. Hi Rachel, how are you?
Hi Danny, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Whereabouts are you calling from?
New Jersey in the United States.
Very nice, very nice. And so we had the time change today. Did you have a time change?
We had ours, but about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, see. Yeah, that's funny. So tell me a bit about your story, your lung transplant, because it's incredible. I think there's such a big organ to have taken out and replaced.
It definitely is. It came on completely unexpected for me. Just a little bit of background to kind of go all the way back. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 4. So that was apparently incredibly young. It's very rare to actually have a child that young diagnosed with full-blown rheumatoid arthritis. And when I was diagnosed back in, I think it was the early 90s, there wasn't, a ton of research. Every year we have more and more research. So when I was diagnosed, my parents kind of were told that you're either going to have, more of an exacerbation with your joints, or there is a systemic version that kind of attacks your organs with inflammation. And they were, oh no, she has the joint type. So we didn't really think we had to worry about that. Flash forward 20 some odd years later, and apparently it's now known that rheumatoid just affects you systemically regardless. So the inflammation that we thought was really just attacking my joints was attacking my lungs, and I think, knock on wood, luckily that was the only organ that was affected. And I mean, going through growing up, because of the arthritis, I wasn't really an athletic kid, so we didn't really notice if it was affecting my lungs at all. When I graduated college and everything, I ended up getting a bout of pneumonia that landed me in the hospital. And that's when we really started seeing a pulmonologist just to kind of track my healing. And about a year after I had the pneumonia, he noticed my lungs were not healing at all. So we had a bunch of tests done. I was actually tested for things like cystic fibrosis, even though, I had never, showed any symptoms of that, just to kind of rule everything out. And then a biopsy confirmed that it was fibrosis. So it was advanced scarring of the lungs. And from that point on, I think that was 2011. I was pretty stable. I again was not doing anything crazy athletic, but I was getting on with life. I was working and all of that. And then about 2015 was when I saw my doctor, and he was like, okay, well, you're losing a lot of weight, and your lung function is slowly dropping. So he suggested that I get tested for oxygen, which I was not happy about at all. And then followed that up with, and I think you should be evaluated for a lung transplant, which was like the roof caving in.
Yeah, so that's a big shock. Yeah.
Oh, huge.
Did you? So one, I didn't realize that arthritis can affect the organs. So obviously, most people know it as something that affects the joints and the bones.
Yeah. So there's a few different, probably I don't want to say a few because then I know I'll exclude somebody, but there's actually various different forms of arthritis out there. The one that I think people think of mostly when they think of arthritis is the osteoarthritis. So, you played a lot of sports, and now it's like bone on bone and degenerative, kind of the things like when you get older, people think of, that's more osteoarthritis. But rheumatoid arthritis is actually, it's about inflammation. So it's an autoimmune disease where basically your body goes haywire, and instead of, attacking outside germs and things like that, it turns inward and starts attacking your body. And that one actually has a genetic component. So actually a few people on my mother's side had rheumatoid, but they were all diagnosed fairly later in life, like 50s, 60s. So I got to be the lucky young one to draw the card.
So did you have asthma pumps or anything? Did they think it was asthma or anything like that, or?
At first, first I was given, it wasn't until after the pneumonia that, when we started seeing the pulmonologist, that as they were trying to confirm that it was the fibrosis, I was on like some inhalers and, bronchodilators, anything to kind of like see if they could open up the lung function. And I mean, it might have worked a little bit, but it was really just a pretty steady decline up until I was put on oxygen in 2015. And then that helped, I would say, alleviate like, the gasping and all of that. But even that was, as I was on it for a while, I think I ended up being on oxygen 24 hours a day for about, I think it was like a year and a half or so. And that even kind of steadily decreased where, my lung function kept going down, the oxygen increased, and, it was not fun being tethered to an oxygen tank.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So how does that work? Obviously, when you're at home, you can have a tank, but if you want to go out, do you have to carry like a big tank, like on a trolley, or?
So at first my lung function wasn't too terrible. So they have these little like portable, they call them concentrators. So at home you have like the big plastic one that you plug into the wall, and so that keeps you going continuously. But if your lung function is kind of in like a certain range, they give you like a little portable concentrator that pulls air in and then puts out fresh oxygen for you. But the downside is you have to kind of know your limits and know how quickly the battery is going to run up on the machine. So that's kind of like the first stage that I went through. And then as my lung function decreased more, I did have to use the big metal aluminum tanks that they have. And those, to be honest, the portable ones that we had, I think they only lasted about an hour and a half. Oh, wow. So you had to know where you were going and definitively like how many tanks to bring. Otherwise, you can get stuck in a bad situation.
Yeah, you don't want to be caught out without your tanks.
Absolutely not.
And so, you get told you need this lung transplant, and had you really spent much time in hospital before? Had you had any surgeries or?
Not, I had surgery once when I was, I think about 11 or 12. It was corrected foot surgery. So I was kind of in there for, I think, I don't know, a few days. But it was nothing, honestly, the first, not that that's not major surgery, especially for a kid, but the first major surgery was really the biopsy that I had to kind of diagnose the fibrosis. And I remember like going in for that and going through my head was like, oh my goodness, they're going to like puncture into my lung to take a piece of it. Like, I thought that was like the wildest thing. And it was crazy that they were going to like perform surgery on like a vital organ. Like, again, not that things can't go wrong when they're doing any sort of surgery, but I was like, this is like a vital organ. So other than those two experiences, I had, luckily as a kid, even though I was sick pretty much my whole childhood, I wasn't really in the hospital. I had, fairly good experiences with like the medications that my rheumatologist has prescribed. So this was like, again, in my mind, like, oh, wow, this is like a major surgery. So it was pretty daunting to hear it.
Yeah. And a biopsy, like you say, it's not something to take lightly. I mean,
absolutely.
And I'm presuming it's kind of the same as the liver biopsy they had. That they put like a tiny needle and they take a sliver out, and they're able to, analyze it. Is that kind of the same?
Right. I think I'm not sure if they use a needle. I know I did have to go into like an operating room, and I was put under general anesthesia, and I have, I think, 2 scars, like one on my back and one under my arm. So I don't know whether they kind of came in, from both angles, and I think they took almost like a little one of those pincers and take a snip out, and as they're taking the snip out, they put like a staple in. It all seemed very high tech and cool to me, but yeah, so that was the biopsy for the lung.
Wow. And so did they do a biopsy of both lungs, or did they already have an idea of which lung that needed replacing?
No, they actually did. They just did the biopsy on the right lung. I know they gave me a reasoning why. I think it was like the way the lobes were set up. It was like an easier way to get the biopsy on that side. But they, from all the testing, like the CAT scans and things like that, they had determined that my lungs pretty much were equally as fibrotic as the other one. So it didn't really matter, I guess, in their mind, which one they took the sample from, as they were both kind of affected by the same disease.
Yeah. So then they've told you need this, and then what sort of process? What happened just before the operation?
Sure.
Yeah, did you have to go to hospital for like obviously all the checks, and then did you have like mental checks and everything?
Yep, all the evaluations. Yeah, so we went to one of the hospitals near me in New York, and because they had like, you know, larger lung transplant centers there. So we went to one of those hospitals and basically went through the full evaluation protocol. You know, all sorts of testings. They tested my heart to make sure like there was no, you know, swelling or enlargement of the heart, and, you know, tons of scans of my lungs of all different sorts, blood tests. And then, like you said, they also there put you through, you know, like a social worker talks to you, a psychiatrist talks to you to make sure that, you know, not only are you physically healthy enough to withstand the surgery, but that, you know, mentally and socially, like your support system outside. And because we're in the US too, they also had you speak with a financial advisor to make sure you are financially able to go through, you know, with not just the surgery, but also affording all of the medications or any, you know, doctor's visits, testings, and things like that after the surgery as well.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a friend about that earlier. Like, she was asking about the cost of stuff in America, and she's like, "How do people afford it?" And it is crazy. Like, there's so much pressure, and it's so daunting and scary as it is. I can't imagine what that pressure added on to it is like, really.
It's very. I honestly I cannot imagine, because fortunately I was one of the lucky ones that I was able to, through my company, I work from home, and they were extremely accommodating, so I was actually able to keep my job literally. Like, I worked like up until like the day before I had surgery, and so I, through them, had really good insurance and did not have to pay costs out of pocket. But I mean, I've heard horror stories from people in like the same program who have to do, like, you know, fundraisers and things like that just to be able to get accepted into the program, which, like you said, I mean, when you're told you need major surgery, that's mind shattering enough. And then
Yeah.
you have to also be able to afford it on top of it. It's definitely not a good situation.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that you worked all the way up until your transplant. Did you find that kind of helped? Because for me, I was off work until that whole time, and I know a lot of people get signed off, and they could be waiting a year, 2 years, 3 years, and without this, you know, no work to focus on, you can kind of become lost. So was that good in a way?
I think so. I mean, I definitely threw myself into work, especially because I was at home. It wasn't like I was, you know, carting oxygen in tanks back and forth
Yeah.
and things like that. But I definitely, you know, it was a nice distractor, from having to, you know, focus. Like, we definitely had our routine down with, you know, I had my go bag ready for whenever they did call, and, you know, we had all our doctor's appointments and things like that. But it definitely did help to have work as a kind of like an outlet. So it was kind of a place where I wasn't like sick Rachel. I was, you know, Rachel the colleague who could continue to work, and I was, you know, participating in things,
Yeah.
and, you know, not just living as Rachel the lung transplant, you know, patient.
Yeah, that's really nice. And you mentioned the ready to go bag, and it's actually something that we don't really talk about, but it's really a vital piece of kit, isn't it? Because, you know,
It absolutely is.
can you remember what you had?
I did. I had a nice comfy change of clothes. I made sure I picked a sweatshirt that zipped up, so that way I wouldn't have to, like, after
Yeah,
post transplant,
good
have to
idea. Great
wiggle
idea.
into a shirt. But, you know, a t-shirt, like just some nice comfy clothes to kind of leave the hospital in. And I think I had, one or two of the Harry Potter books and things like that. You know, just some things to kind of keep your mind distracted while you're in the hospital, kind of recovering.
Yeah, that, and I always say to people a charger, because
Yes. Phone charger.
You do not want to be stuck there, especially nowadays that everyone's got a phone. You got everything on your phone, so that's the last thing you want to get.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how long was you in hospital for?
So I went on the list in January of 2017, and I was extremely lucky. I only waited on the list for 2.5 weeks.
Wow,
and
that's good.
got brought in as a backup, because of my disease nature was fibrosis. I was able to either accept 2 lungs or a single lung, because my the native lung wouldn't pass anything on to the transplanted lung.
Yeah.
So I was actually brought in as a backup to somebody who needed 2. And we were, I kept telling myself, oh, this is just one of those dry runs, and we're gonna go ahead and go home after this, and that'll be it. And it ended up being my time. So I think I actually received my transplant on February 6th of 2017, and I was discharged out of the hospital 10 days later on the 16th.
Wow, 10 days. That's
10
incredible.
days.
Was that your first call in as well?
First call.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm so pleased for you, because it is like distressing, and it's hard when you get the calls that it's not the time. So 10 days. And for a lung, like I'm presuming they're going to have to cut your chest open to do this operation. It's not small, right?
They do cut it open, but I didn't have the way that they do it here. I didn't have like the sternum crack. Right. They actually did an incision just right under my left breast. Yeah. And from what I've read, I like Googled it afterwards, because I was like, this is crazy how they did it. But they actually take your ribs and just kind of separate them, and somehow take the old lung out and slip the new one in. And so I just have one little incision that actually like doesn't really show at all, which is crazy.
That is absolutely incredible. Like amazing. It's brilliant what they can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I was expecting, like the full chest to be opened, and
that's what I thought too.
Yeah, that's mad. So did they not tell you what the procedure was beforehand, or?
They did during one of the evaluations. That's when, like you had said, when I went in for the first evaluation and we spoke with the surgeon, I was expecting full chest crack. They gotta open you up, and he was like, no, we just do like a nice little incision there, and if it's 2 lungs, you get 2 incisions. And he goes, yeah, we just kind of lift the muscle up, pull the ribs apart, and slip it in. They don't even crack any ribs or anything like that. So that was mind-blowing to hear that when you went in for the evaluation.
I bet that was a small sort of relief out of all the badness sort of thing.
Definitely. Yeah, right. One little silver lining.
Yeah. At least I don't have to have my ribs broken open.
Exactly.
Mad. And then, so you went home. So you must be on anti-rejection tablets like most transplant patients.
Yep. Yeah. They sent me home. Luckily, I was, I think, most nervous about going home with the pills, because I was like, they give you a little course beforehand to kind of teach you, this is obviously everybody's a different case, but these are the general terms of, you're going to have to take a lot of pills. And I was just, oh my gosh, how am I going to remember all of these pills? But I found in my hospital, they did an excellent job of preparing you. So every time the nurses actually came in, just doing their rounds and, bringing your medication in the hospital, they would physically point the pills out to you and say, okay, this is your tacrolimus. This is how much you take. What is this? So it was like a quiz every day.
Yeah.
That way you get familiar with them. And then the pharmacist actually helped me set up my first pill box in hospital before I left. And they let me go with, a big instruction sheet of this is your dosage, this is the time, and all of that. So I have to say, for being as worried as I was, it ended up now it's one of those things that I don't know if you feel the same way. I can just do this without even thinking about it. Filling up.
Yeah, it's definitely very daunting when you get given a big box full of drugs, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to remember all this? How am I going to keep it organized? And that is the key, isn't it? Really, is just trying to be organized. Like you say, the pill pots are absolutely brilliant for that.
Exactly. I love them. And that's one of the things that I told them, that jokingly and kind of half jokingly, that this couldn't have happened to a better person, because I am Miss organization over here. So I love having I have, my pill drawer where I have my backups and, my refills and everything like that. And I actually, my family makes fun of me because I have a notebook that they instruct you to, fill out a notebook right after you get out of the hospital. And, you go to all your visits and they want you to keep track of your vitals and things. And I'm 4 years post-transplant now, and I'm still keeping my notebook every day with all the rules and all my notes. So
that's really interesting. That's good though.
It is.
Yeah. Did you write down your thoughts as well, or is it like, actually how you're feeling as well as the sort of actual stats?
Care about like physical things. So I mean, every once in a while I'll put like, oh, I had a great, therapy visit, and this is what we spoke about. But most of the time it's, if I had a little, allergy season is kicking in over here. So, had to take a little extra Benadryl today because, I felt sneezy or something like that. But it's just, for me, it's a good way because right now with, how well I'm doing, I go back to clinic every 3 months. So wow. That's a lot of time to remember everything, in between visits. So for me, it's a good thing to kind of, the night before a visit, I'll kind of leaf through the last 3 months and be like, oh, okay, nothing of note was in my, book. And, I'll go through my list of questions if I have any questions for my clinic. So it's just a good way for me to keep on top of anything that I should be notifying my team about.
Is your clinic local when you have to go for the 3 months check?
Not kind of ish. It's about an hour and 15 minutes away.
Yeah, so. That's about the same as mine. It's fairly local. I mean, for America, that's definitely local, considering some people have to fly from different parts of the states and.
Right. Yeah. So for me, it's fairly local.
Yeah, that's good. That's handy, especially as you are going every 3 months. Have they said, will that ever change to like once a year?
No, so for my clinic, that's their I mean, I think I've heard of some patients going every 4 months or something like that. But really they like to keep a close eye on us. I'm not sure if that's different for any of the other organs. I know for lungs specifically, I don't think they'll let you go any further than 3 months, just because honestly, I've had since the transplant, I had 2 bouts of rejection, and we found it extremely early. I wasn't even symptomatic, didn't even have any changes on my home spirometry, and the only way we found it was at the PFT at the hospital. I guess it must be a little bit more fine-tuned. So I think that's really why they don't let you go too much longer, because the earlier you catch something, the better you can treat it.
Yeah. So what happened when you had these bouts of rejection? Was you in hospital? Hospitalized?
Luckily, they caught it so early that basically they saw on the PFT that my numbers went down a little bit. There's always I guess a threshold, so they went a little bit below the threshold, and my pulmonologist brings me in for a biopsy. They go almost down your nose into your lung. They take a few biopsy samples, and they found the rejection. And because it was a very low level, I think there's they start at A1, which is the lowest type, and that's the type that I had both times. And so all they did was basically send me a prescription of a prednisone or a steroid blast. Yeah. So I started at 60 milligrams and then tapered down all the way to my regular dose. And I think after that, 6 to 8 weeks later, you go back for a rebiopsy, and then it was cleared up by that time. So luckily, I did not have to spend any time in hospital.
That's really good. But 60 milligrams of steroids that's a strong dose.
It's very interesting around the house for a few days.
Yeah, I bet.
My husband and my mom's favorite story is that I was on a prednisone blast for a bout of rejection, and we had ordered dinner from a local pizza place, and I got a cheesesteak sandwich, and it was made wrong, and I literally opened the sandwich and started crying.
Yeah.
Because prednisone, just your emotions are absolutely insane. So crying over a cheesesteak was what happened.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that's fairly valid reason, and I think I'd cry naturally if my cheesesteak sandwich, especially if you've been thinking about it all day and it's been something you're looking forward to. The disappointment.
See, you get it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have sympathy for you there. That's brilliant. And then, so did you have any other side effects from the steroids, like sleeping or, or poor sleep or anything like that?
With the blasts, I usually get insomnia for like 1 or 2 nights. Luckily, I don't. I know I've heard people who, like, even on their regular doses, get pretty bad insomnia from the steroid. So I didn't struggle with that too much, but I will definitely get like the moon face after, I think, like a week or two of it, and then I just feel like it takes forever to to go back away. But
Yeah.
I feel like luckily those are really the only, big big reactions that I have to it.
Yeah. So what medication are you on currently?
Currently, I'm on the Prograf for tacrolimus, the
Yeah.
anti-rejection. I'm on mycophenolate, another anti-rejection. Prednisone, the steroid. Let's see what else. I'm on a couple of one antibiotic and one antiviral. The valganciclovirs for the CMV virus, because my donor and I were actually mismatched in that. Apparently, she had CMV, and somehow I never had caught it in my life.
Right.
So most people, I think, in my clinic get to go off of that after 1 year, but because I was mismatched, I have to just stay on that forever. Let me see. I think a lot of the other ones, I'm on a couple of blood pressure medications because that was one of the side effects that I did get from, I think, the tacrolimus. I have increased blood pressure now. And then a lot of the other ones are a whole bunch of the supplements that we take, to make sure, my bone density doesn't like degrade, and, we're keeping everything else healthy while the, medications do take their toll.
Yeah. That's interesting. So it's quite a lot of medication.
Yeah.
Yeah. And out of interest, as a liver transplant patient, there's sort of certain foods we can't have. And I don't know whether that's because it's processed through the liver or whether they just tell you this because they don't want you to get food poisoning. Is there something that did they tell you about sort of diet?
Yep, definitely. We for me, I know I needed to be, I think it was the first year was like the most restrictive on what I couldn't eat. It got a little bit better, but still, like, I can't have, we can't do anything raw. Nothing raw. You have to have everything well cooked. Fruits and veggies, I can now eat like raw fruits and veggies, but they have to be thoroughly washed and things like that. I think for us, the biggest thing is, like, from eating unwashed fruits and vegetables is actually not so much. I was like, oh, it's got to be the pesticides, right? And they were like, no, it's actually, we're more worried about you breathing in, ingesting dirt that can go into your lungs and spark a fungal infection. Yeah, so and then along that lines, like, no more blue cheese because that is a fungus, and things like that. And actually, my clinic is, so I found out, one of the more restrictive, and actually I'm not allowed to drink any alcohol of any kind either, which kind of bodes well because my liver numbers every once in a while have gone a little wacky. So I'm like, you know what, if I have to give that up, that's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting how every hospital is different.
Mm-hmm.
Because you always see on transplant groups, and it gets a bit heated sometimes, but people, kind of argue over what they've been told, and it's like, sorry, my dog's just knocking into me.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so they get, everyone gets told different, and I think it's just about being sensible, isn't it, really?
That's it, exactly. I mean, because I'm a very much a rule follower, and, like, will not do anything or step a toe out of line unless my transplant center approves it. But even with them, I've kind of been more restrictive, and I'm like, oh, well, can I do this or can I do that? And they're like, Rachel, we gave you a transplant to, like, live your life. Just go live your life. We know you're going to make the right decision. So, like you said, it's all about taking the instructions that they give you and just making smart decisions.
Yeah. And is everything like flying okay?
Yeah, actually, I mean, pre-COVID times, we definitely, after my transplant, you have to wait 1 year. Once you're past the 1 year mark, then they kind of, as long as you're, flying. I mean, I always told them where we were going, because I know some places, like, if you go into, like, Asia in certain areas, you have to get, like, specific vaccinations and things.
Yeah.
But we've, I've gone down. My sister got married down in Louisiana in the south of the United States. My husband and I were over in Northern Ireland. So we've traveled around, and that's definitely one of the things I can't wait to do once all COVID is gone or better.
Yeah, and how's everything been COVID wise for you guys there? Have you managed to avoid everyone that's had it, or?
So far, so good. Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously COVID's sort of very lung orientated as well, isn't it? So, I mean, because I got COVID over Christmas time, but luckily for me, I wasn't really that ill. But I can imagine for yourself, it's something you definitely want to avoid.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely, when it kind of came around last March, it was, a big concern of my, my clinic. We got on the phone and it was kind of like, okay, for the next month or so, whatever the lockdown period was, even though we never fully locked down over here, but it was kind of like a self-imposed lockdown. And we've just pretty much, like, my husband and I have been in with our 2 pups, and everybody that we've kind of seen over the last year, it's been really just a couple of outings, like in our backyard or like a parent's backyard, and with masks, 6 feet apart, like, fully distanced, fully, all the precautions we were following. But it is definitely a huge worry. And I mean, I've had people that are in the same clinic that did get COVID, and, one gentleman was extremely lucky and he didn't really get a bad case of it, and somebody else ended up back on oxygen, and that's just, to me, like the scariest prospect. So we're definitely, I feel like it's getting better, and honestly the vaccinations are really giving me a lot of hope that hopefully soon we'll be out of the out of the worst of it. But it definitely, we need to still follow all those precautions until everything is settled a bit more, in my mind.
Yeah, I see that you had you've had 1 vaccination.
I had 2.
Oh, you've had 2 now. Brilliant.
Yes, we got my second one just a few days ago.
Oh wow! Oh yes. You mentioned that in the message. Yeah. Yeah, and you felt fine. You said no side effects.
Nothing. I mean, I got a very sore arm, which I had after the first shot, and the day that I got it, I just kind of felt very wiped out and exhausted. But I kind of slept it off, took some Tylenol, and 2 days after that, I felt absolutely nothing. So great reaction, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I suppose your husband's still waiting.
He has received his first one, luckily, and will be getting his second one shortly, in like a couple of weeks. So hopefully then, we'll be able to do a little bit more, within reason.
Yeah. Did they, out of interest, like prioritize you as a vulnerable person, or did it just come around as it did? Because I've had mine before a lot of other people here.
Yeah, they're doing like a I guess you want to call it like a tiered system over here as well. So like the first people over here to get it were really like the healthcare workers, the frontline doctors, nurses, EMTs, and then they've slowly been opening them up, every couple of weeks or so. And so I forget when they opened. I think it actually opened in January, like the end of January, for like my group, but then it was, we were technically allowed to get it, but then it was the race to find the vaccine, because just trying to get like an appointment somewhere was incredibly difficult.
So you had to book it yourself. So there would be clinics with it going, and it'd be like first come, first served, or book an appointment.
Yeah. Look, I had actually I spoke to my doctor just a couple weeks after they had opened up the tier for my state. And she was like, I asked her, I was like, should I wait until, like, is the clinic going to offer it? Should I be waiting? And she was like, honestly, you're probably going to get it way quicker if you just book it yourself through the states. So that's the route I ended up going.
It's good that you have that option.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you stayed at home with your dogs. Now, I know transplant patients, or when I was transplanted, they kind of said, it might be best to avoid animals. And then I see the questions where people are like, can I ever have a dog? Is it safe to have a dog? And, obviously I've got a dog, and it is safe to have a dog. did you have them around the whole time? Was you precautious at all, or?
Yeah, I did. So we had our first dog pre-transplant. I think we had gotten him honestly like 3 months before I was put on oxygen. So he was also a big emotional help through everything. But so that was obviously one of my first questions was, I have a dog, what is, is this safe? Is it, I mean, not that he was going to go anywhere, but my doctor was, I think the only animals they really discourage you from having are birds, because with the wings and flapping, like they can kind of spread some things around. Cats are also fine as well. They said you just like can't clean the litter box. I can't pick up after the dog, so
that's a good excuse. That's a great excuse. That's the best excuse I've ever heard. I can't do that. You have to do it, honey.
So that, but I mean, other than that, it's just kind of, I guess, like sensible sanitation. Like, I never let the dogs lick me in the face. If I'm petting them and then I go, cook food, you wash your hands first. Just, things that are kind of, a little bit, I would say like common sense sanitation rules. But they had absolutely no problem with me having the dogs.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for talking to me. I've got one question more. Is if there was anything that you could have sort of told yourself pre-transplant, is there anything that you would have? I know I've put you on the spot here a bit.
I know, it's a tough question. Honestly, it's something that I've told to other pre-transplant patients that I've talked to, and it's just trust your center. I have a big, respect for my doctor, my nurses, everybody, because they really are like, I'm a little bit of a control freak, and so it was hard for me to wrap my head around that there are things that are going to happen post-transplant, that you're going to get sick, you're probably going to get rejection at some time, and all of that seems so daunting and life-altering. But trust your clinic, because they honestly have your best interest at heart, and they'll do the right thing to get you on the right path to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, that's great advice. And you're right, it is very daunting. It's very scary. But you're doing very well. You look very happy, you look very healthy. It's great.
Yes, definitely feeling happy and healthy.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for chatting to me. I'll let you get back to your dogs now.
Thanks, Danny.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.